Good morning. Good day. Oh, it's still morning.
It's still morning, yeah. It's not
Unless you're on the East Coast, which you might be. You know, there's a chance of that. Welcome, everybody. I'm Kira. This is my sister, Sammy, over here. I don't. Yeah. It's hard. It's hard with this because it's reversed. Speaking of hard, speaking of difficult, today's conversation, I have it that it's going to be a difficult one.
Yeah.
And mostly because I'm allowing a lot of my own personal feelings to sort of cloud my judgment on that. We are going to be talking specifically to white people today. I'm personally seeing more and more the responsibility that's there for us as white women, especially white women who consider ourselves allies, to be speaking up and educating other white people about what white supremacy looks like in this country, how we can help to eradicate it. Ultimately, even if it doesn't happen in our lifetime, take those steps toward that eradication. And also, just some of the things that I've been seeing personally on social media that I want to be calling out and have other whites be looking out for when they're navigating the conversation of racism and white supremacy in the country.
And you make a good point, Kira, that this is This is an uncomfortable conversation for everybody. And, and for white people who we're talking to specifically, this will be an uncomfortable conversation. And, something that I'm reminded of that we say in exercise all the time is that an hour of discomfort a day will lead to a life of accomplishment, freedom, peace, and comfort. So it's important that we engage in these uncomfortable conversations, because as white people, we have this privilege to avoid the discomfort of these conversations. For people of color, this is not avoidable. This is their everyday discomfort. And we have a responsibility as white people to engage in that discomfort, and engage in that conversation.
Yeah. What's so interesting about the discomfort that I've been feeling throughout the week inside of, well, two things, right? There's one of of course, correcting other white people or educating white people about what is so, in my perspective over here as an ally. And then the other side of that conversation, looking at how I have actually fed into white supremacy in the country. But what's interesting about that discomfort truly is that at no point are anybody's words or, any confrontation going to have me wind up killed.
No. Yeah.
And so I'm looking at my own personal fragility around not speaking up and not being bolder in this conversation, and really reassessing what is my commitment to racial justice in this country. And I've been questioning it, and that has been horribly uncomfortable. And what I invite white people to do is, when that discomfort, or what we call a trigger, comes up for you, instead of being in reaction, take a moment and ask yourself what's there and why you're triggered about something, right? Because if there's no trigger, then there's probably nothing there for you. And if there is a trigger, there's something to look at, regardless of how good of a white person you are, right? You're one of the good ones, right? What does that even mean? And I think we walk around, especially as women, talking about a patriarchal society. And I think we all understand that we're all products of a patriarchal society, and we all accept that, right? So why is it so hard to understand that we are also products of a white supremacist society?
Yeah, for sure.
A racist society. There's no way to step out of the context inside of which you were born, and something that I have to remind myself and white people is that it's not our fault. Or like Billy Joel said, we didn't start the fire, and ignoring it, pretending like it's not there, staying inside of our comfort zone so that we don't, offend or make somebody else uncomfortable, just is not going to work anymore. It doesn't work anymore for me.
No, it spreads the fire. You ignore the fire and the fire spreads.
Yes. So today we are no longer ignoring. I have committed to do my part inside of this fight, to be bolder and to speak my truth around this. And I think it's going to take something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So where do you want to start, Kira?
Well, gosh, there's so many places to start. And I think logically where we should start is numbers and cold hard facts. Because I think that is a really great doorway into understanding what the actual issue is here. And so I just wanted to share with our audience a few things that I just dug up this morning from articles. And, in my perspective, none of this is new. And, I've always had it, and I posted on Facebook in a Facebook group called White People Doing Something. I just always assumed that everybody knew this stuff.
No.
And I think that was one of my has been one of my big mistakes in navigating all of this throughout my life. And, and I've been an active person in politics. I've been an activist since 2003 and an organizer since 2009. And I just assumed everybody knew.
Yeah.
A lot of this stuff, I always thought it seemed very obvious. So I just wanted to read some facts from NAACP.org. It's actually NAACP. If anybody is looking it up, it's not NAACP.org, just to be clear.
NAACP.org. I have the facts pulled up in front of me as well.
Fantastic. So I'm just going to go through them because they lay them out really clearly here. And I think that anybody who doesn't know about this is going to find a lot of these facts staggering.
Yeah.
So, between 1980 and 2015, the number of people incarcerated in America increased from roughly 500,000 to 2.2 million. And the United States makes up 5% of the world's population and 21% of the world's prisoners, which is already problematic.
Yeah.
But in 2014, African Americans constituted 2.3 million, or 34% of the 6.8 million correctional population. 34%. They make up 13% of our population. So they're massively overrepresented. We also know that it is a fact that Black people and white people consume drugs at the same rate. And actually, if you look at studies, about one of our closest relatives to humans, I was watching a documentary on why am I thinking, like, were they bonobos?
Bonobos or chimps?
Well, they consume drugs and alcohol at the same rate as well. So it's really interesting. You're like, it's not like, Black people are consuming drugs more, or there's more criminality there. That's just not true.
Dude, we consume a lot of drugs.
Oh yeah, no, we're gonna get to that. We're gonna get to that. They're Black Americans are incarcerated at more than 5 times the rate of whites. 5 times.
And we talked about that in one of our recent episodes as well, talking about Cassandra Greer and her husband Nicholas, who died in Cook County Jail from COVID-19. And on that show, we laid out the numbers and demonstrated that 5 times more African Americans are incarcerated than white people in the United States.
Nationwide, African American children represent 32% of children who are arrested. And also, this is from NAACP, and I don't really, I don't know the etiquette around this, but I tend to think that the term Black is more appropriate than African American.
From what I've heard, it depends on who you're talking to.
Okay.
So, and this is something I wanted to discuss as well, is that each individual has an individual experience in reality. So we can't generalize anyone. We have to ask each individual's perspective. And some people aren't going to want to share their perspective, and that is totally appropriate and valid as well. So I've heard some people preferring people of color, some people preferring Black Americans, some people preferring African Americans. And so if you have a preference, share it with us, because we'd like to know.
Yeah, absolutely. 42% of children who are detained. So nationwide, African American children represent 32% of children who are arrested, 42% of children who are detained, and 52% of children whose cases are judicially waived to criminal court.
Yeah, so they go to criminal court more frequently than anyone.
And tried as adults.
Yeah.
And so going back to this, though African Americans and Hispanics make up approximately 32% of the U.S. population, they comprise 56% of all incarcerated people, and that was in 2015. Let's see. What else? So in 2015,
I loved this stat. If African Americans or Black Americans and Hispanics were incarcerated at the same rates as whites, prison and jail populations would decline by almost 40%, almost half.
mm-hmm. Yep. So, and then in 2015, National Survey Drug Use and Health, this is what we're talking to, about 17 million whites and 4 million African Americans reported having used an illicit drug within the last month. 17 million whites and 4 million African Americans reported having used an illicit drug within the last month. African Americans and whites use drug at similar rates, but the imprisonment rate of African American drug charges are 6 times that of whites. Mm-hmm. And African Americans represent 12.5% of illicit drug users, but 29% of those arrested for drug offenses and 33% of those incarcerated in state facilities.
Yeah, just before the show, Kira and I, you and I were discussing how we've been caught with drugs in our lifetime and not taken to jail for it.
Yeah, and one of the reasons that I brought that up when we started the show is this. I'm hearing a lot of, inside of conversations on social media threads. I'm hearing a lot of people, giving anecdotal evidence to why white privilege doesn't exist, right? It's like, well, I've had a really hard life and I'm white and I've had to work for everything in my life and I'm white, or I've been beat up by cops and I'm white. So, white privilege clearly doesn't exist.
Yeah. So multiply that times at least 5.
Well, and also consider that, if you were beat up by a cop, you probably would have been killed had you been Black.
Yep.
And so whenever you find yourself, white people, making a point through anecdotal evidence, I recommend you take a step back for a moment, because anecdotal evidence does not prove anything. And if you want some anecdotal evidence, I'll tell you about plenty of stories where I've gotten white person privilege and, what Sammy and I have called hot white woman privilege several times. I've been arrested 4 times and never been to jail.
Mm-hmm. Twice over here, never been to jail.
I've crashed my car under the influence of drugs and alcohol, and they drove me home.
Mm-hmm.
The cops did.
Yep.
And then I got an insurance payout.
Yep. I've been pulled over under the influence of drugs without a license in a different state and was given directions home.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So if you want anecdotal evidence, I can give it to you all day long about why white privilege exists.
Yes.
And anecdotal evidence doesn't necessarily prove anything. Look at the numbers. The numbers are staggering. 5 and 6 times more the rate than white people. Mm-hmm. So watch for that evidence. Either, if you're the one, putting it up on any social media threads, or if you're seeing it, it doesn't actually prove anything because some white person had a hard go of life.
Yeah. Well, and when you consider, that a criminal record can reduce the likelihood, and this is going to get into, our economic differences as well. Mm-hmm. When a criminal record can reduce the likelihood of getting a job, and that the negative impact of a criminal record is twice as large for African American applicants. And I consider when I see that, bringing this back to anecdotal evidence, I consider that I was on probation when I got accepted into college, when I became a resident assistant for that university, a decently high-powered position that looks great on a resume. And that wouldn't be possible if I weren't white.
Absolutely. Absolutely. With the history that you and I have, we wouldn't be business owners today. Mm-mm. It's very, very unlikely. And we wouldn't be living the lives that we get to live today. Yeah. Because we would have had a completely different, or at least I assert, there would have been a very different outcome to the silly things we did when we were young, the accidents and mistakes that we made as young people.
The accidents that all young people make, because you're young and you have to test the boundaries. You test the boundaries to figure out what works and what doesn't. And, we get a break from that as white people. We get, a slap on the wrist, don't do it again. We learn our lesson, we move on. But when you're a person of color in the United States, you don't get a slap on the wrist, you get a punch in the face, or you get killed. And
right.
you
Or
don't
a knee in the neck, right?
A knee in the neck. You don't get the opportunity to learn from those mistakes and create a better life for yourself.
That's right. That's right. Now I want to get over. So I, in my activism work, I have largely focused my whole life on economic justice. And that has been my bag for, a decade plus. And I want to talk a little bit about the economic gap that Black people have versus white people. African Americans own approximately 1/10 of the wealth of white Americans. 1/10.
1/10.
In 2016, the median wealth for non-retired Black households 25 years old and older was less than 1/10, similar to whites. Black-white wealth gap has not recovered from the Great Recession. 2007, immediately before the Great Recession, the median wealth of Blacks was nearly 14% that of whites. Although Black wealth increased at a faster rate than white wealth in 2016, Blacks still own less than 10% of the whites' wealth. Black households have fewer and are in greater need of personal savings than their white counterparts for a variety of reasons. Blacks are more likely to experience negative income shocks, but are less likely to have access to emergency savings. African Americans face systemic challenges in narrowing the wealth gap. The wealth gap persists regardless of household education, marital status, age, or income. For instance, the median wealth for Black households with a college degree equaled about 70% of the median wealth for households without a college degree, of white households without a college degree. So if you're Black and you have a college degree, you're going to make 70% of what a white household without a college degree makes.
Yeah, which is fucked.
I know, and especially with how expensive school is now.
Oh, for sure. Sure. No.
So the gap worsens as households grow older. In 2016, Blacks between 50 and 65 years old and near retirement had only about 10% of the wealth of whites in the same age group. This is down from approximately 24% gap in 1998, when the same groups of people were between 32 and 47 years old.
And you know what conversation pisses me off in this realm is the conversation of pulling oneself up by their bootstraps. Because you can just, claw your way up to bridging that 70% gap. But when you consider where this country started, it's obvious that the generational inheritance that white people have experienced, that Black people have not had the opportunity to experience. This country started by Black people being enslaved, by Black people being forced to do free labor for white people who were what's the word I'm looking for? I'm out of words today. I apologize. Yeah. But white people who are benefiting off of that and gaining wealth and then passing that wealth down through generations. And so we started at the top by pushing others down. And now as Black people in America are trying to claw their way up, they're experiencing this gap more and more, and they have nothing to pass down to their children. And while we white people are passing whatever it is that we've gained from our ancestors down to our children.
From a rigged system.
Yep. Yeah. Well, and the system is also built that way. And so changing the system, we have to get down to the source of it. We have to get into the politics of it, as you point to, Kira.
Yeah, and I just want to point out we do have someone in the chat. B. Sanch Mom says, "Well, I don't accept the patriarchy, but it is a reality that needs to be addressed, just like white privilege."
Yes.
Yes. Totally, absolutely. Thank you. Then thank you for clarifying those words. Absolutely.
But I do see so many. And I see a lot of white people speaking to white privilege and understanding that is a reality. But I feel like, and this is anecdotal evidence, is my experience as a white woman, I experience that there are far more men who are willing to acknowledge the patriarchy and fight against it and speak out against men who are upholding the patriarchy than I see white people who are willing to speak up against other white people who are reinforcing white privilege.
100%. I've been one of those white people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I can speak to that. And like I said, that has been something over the last week and a half that I've really had to take on and swallow. I even believe that there was a bit of a passive aggressive post made directed at me that, and even if it wasn't, it triggered me, and so when I got, and B. Sanchimano says it's Stephanie. Yeah, I know it's Stephanie. I just I wanted to make sure that I keep your privacy if you didn't want, everyone to know that it's Stephanie. It's my friend. So I, regardless of whether or not it was directed at me, I noticed that something happened internally to me when I read that post. And so I reminded myself that means there's something to look at.
Yep.
You cannot control your reactions internally to what is happening right now. And there's no reason to feel guilty for the reactions or feel ashamed of the reactions. But what we can take responsibility for is looking at ourselves and learning from those reactions, because those reactions tell us something. Mm-hmm. And when I reacted to that post, I knew that there was something that I have been leaving on the table for years. And, I think that I have been hiding behind this social justice, economic justice warrior facade for a really long time. And I've gotten to be really proud of myself around it all. And it just doesn't work anymore.
Yeah.
And the more opportunities we have to peel the curtain back and look at the little white man behind the curtain, right? We can start to actually repair the damage that has been done over centuries in this country. So I want to talk about the centuries of damage and really, in my opinion, what we owe Black people in this country. I mean, we're the most powerful country and richest country there ever was. And if we did not have Black people as slaves, I don't know that would be the case.
Yeah.
And you guys are all the articles that we're pulling from, we will put on to the thread on our YouTube page so that you can read all of these. So this is an article from Brookings.edu. Today, the average white family has roughly 10 times the amount of wealth as the average Black family. White college graduates have over 7 times more wealth than Black college graduates. Making the American dream an equitable reality demands the same U.S. government that denied wealth to Blacks restore that deferred wealth through reparations to their descendants in the form of individual cash payments in the amount that will close the Black-white racial wealth divide. And I've believed that reparations needs to be a thing for a long time. So in 1860, over $3 billion was the value assigned to the physical bodies of enslaved Black Americans to be used as free labor and production. This was more money than was invested in factories and railroads combined. Mm-hmm. So in 1861, the value placed on cotton produced by enslaved Blacks was $250 million. Slavery enriched white slave owners and their descendants, and it fueled the country's economy while suppressing wealth building for the enslaved.
Well, and when you take inflation into account and you consider those numbers, if we pay those prices back in reparations, and I hear so many white people fighting against this because I think that the fear is that if we pay that money back, white people are going to be left without. Mm-hmm. And it's like, yeah, exactly. because
and we've been doing just fine for a really long time.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So yeah, it's going to bring you down a notch.
And you know what? I don't even think that that's necessarily true.
Because
there are a lot of ways to go about paying these reparations where we are wasting money so that we can continue not only slavery in a lot of ways, if we look at our prison system, which is another thing we're going to be getting into, right?
Continued slavery, yes.
Yeah.
Well, and when you take that 40% out of prison, how much money are you saving on the prison system?
Exactly. Not to mention, so there's a program called the 1033 program that was instituted in 1997 by Bill Clinton, where basically we take the surplus from the military because we give the Pentagon so much more money than they need, even though we're, basically stationed in however many hundreds of countries. I think it's like 200 different countries right now. We still have a surplus of supplies. And the 1033 program militarizes the police forces. So I'll tell you a little bit about that program as well, if I can find the article, because I have about 1 million articles pulled up here.
Yes.
So it might take me a moment. But I think it's about 8. Okay, so in the United States, the 1033 program transfers excess military equipment to civilian law enforcement agencies. The program legally requires the Department of Defense to make various items of equipment available to local law enforcement. Mm-hmm. The 1033 program was instituted per Bill Clinton's 1997 National Defense Authorization Act, though precedents to its existed. I don't know what that means. So as of 2014, 8,000 local law enforcement agencies participated in the program and transferred $5.1 billion in military material. I wonder where we could get the money for reparations, though.
Huh. Oh, well, there's 5.1 billion of it.
Yeah, right. And so I think this conversation about because one group of people gets a leg up that another group of people aren't going to be doing as well. I mean, the gap won't be as big.
The gap won't be as big. Well, and I think that white people benefit. I know that white people benefit so much from that gap. White people are so threatened by the concept of Black people being equal to us. And so that threat comes in and creates that trigger that, oh no, we can't pay back those reparations. We need all of these resources. We need this leg up that we have. We can't be equal to everyone.
Mm-hmm. Jeff Bezos could pay those reparations without batting an eye.
Oh, for sure. Right. Oh, for sure.
So, we have so much wealth in this country that, the next person I hear that says, how are we going to pay for that? When it comes to reparations, universal health care, maybe even a UBI, especially in times of a pandemic. I don't even know. I'm a pacifist, or at least I play one on TV, and I just want to punch them in the face.
You a pacifist? That's hilarious. Hilarious.
I do my best, right? Again, I am not ashamed for my nervous system reaction, and I take responsibility for what I do out here in the world. And so I do try to stay peaceful. I do try to bring empathy and compassion to every conversation, but it's a bullshit argument that we don't have money in this country to take care of the people who made this country wealthy.
Yep. So
we got to get real, you guys. We got to get real. More for them does not mean less for us. So there's that. So I think I could go on and on when it comes to the economic gap, the incarceration gap, the health gap. What is it, Sammy? That a Black woman, Stephanie says, since when, pacifist? I said I'd play one on TV. Yeah, I know. So, but I think it's like Black women are, and I don't have this statistic in front of me. I've just heard it several times recently. I think it's 3 times more likely to die giving childbirth than a white woman.
Well, and what was the article we saw that that in Chicago, this is relating to the healthcare, that in Chicago, Black people make up 30% of our population, but 60% of our COVID-19 deaths. And so when you consider this economic gap that we have, and the healthcare gap, and so many gaps, but this is because there isn't access to healthcare. When you can't afford the healthcare, you can't afford the insurance that is required of us. And then when you can't afford that insurance that's required of us, you then get fined for not having the insurance that you can't afford.
Right.
So the system just pushes them down further and further and further and further into the ground until we have Black Americans dying, being incarcerated, where we're essentially working, our system is working to wipe out Black Americans.
And we're not, and just as a caveat, similar things do happen to poor whites. And when you take an aerial view and you look at the numbers, Blacks are disproportionately affected by these issues, disproportionately.
Even with equality, which we don't have, even with equality, paying those reparations, there are still going to be poor Black people, the same way that there are still going to be poor white people. It's just the way it goes. But as you and I have talked about, Kira, as far as white privilege goes, white people right now have the benefit of the doubt. So even if you're a poor white person, you do have more privilege than a poor Black person does, because people look at you and they're not afraid of you.
You're not as much of a threat.
You're not a threat. People look at you and they're not assuming that you're stealing from them. They're not assuming that you're going to hurt them. And that's what gives you that white privilege, regardless of where you are on the economic ladder.
Right. I want to go back to what Stephanie B. Sanchmom is saying on here. So I want to go through. I was listening to a live panel last Saturday with thought leaders from the Black community. The biggest takeaways: the way for white people to attack racism is not to say what else could the Black community possibly do to combat racism. It is for the white community to say, what do we need to do to combat racism, and to not be afraid to confront other white people who espouse racist or tone-deaf racial stereotypes, and to have those difficult conversations. And then she also reminds us that there was a $2 trillion bailout to the corporations during the pandemic. So we have the money.
We have the money.
We really, really do. I mean, it's an outrageous argument. Please stop making it if you are somebody that's making the argument, where are we going to get the money?
Well, there's just a silent genocide going on of the Black community. A silent genocide against the Black community. And because it is silent, and because it is so strategic inside of our government systems, white people have the privilege of not having to see it. They don't have to be faced with it. And so many white people are completely ignorant that this is even going on. Like, they don't see it. And so then when they hear it, they get offended because they don't understand. And it's time to wake up. It's time to look around. It's time to look at the numbers.
Come on.
Yeah,
absolutely. And if you start a sentence with, I have a Black friend, again, check that.
Shut up.
Shut up. Anecdotal evidence doesn't go anywhere.
No.
And having a Black friend doesn't eradicate you from being a racist.
Yeah.
It is the context inside of which we live. Ask a fish, how's the water? The fish is going to say, what water? Come on. So that is, those are some of the things that I wanted to share with our audience as far as numbers are concerned. And you know what? Like, as I was doing research, I did hours of research this morning, and I've done hours of research on this stuff for a lifetime. And we could never cover in a million years what there is to cover around the injustices that have been rained upon the Black communities of this country. And, it is about time that white people shut up and really just look at themselves, because that is the only way this is going to come to a close in any way, in any form.
And as a therapist, what I see so frequently in people, And I think the biggest issue in the human mind that stops us is that we believe that our reality is the reality. And what we as humans fail to see is that our reality isn't reality. So when those experiences come up that challenge our reality, our immediate reaction, our trigger reaction is, you are wrong. My reality is right because it is the reality. And so the responsibility of white people is to shut up, shut your mouth, listen to someone else's reality and experience, step into it, hear it, take it on, try to imagine what it would be like to live that person's reality. And then standing from that space, what can you do about it to give a hand to that person, to help them, to give space to them, to stand up against the system that is creating a silent genocide against them.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So one of the other topics I wanted to move into, now that I feel we've got a really good foundation around what's actually so, not what's anecdotal. Again, I can give you all kinds of anecdotes. Remember that white kid that raped a girl behind a dumpster and served no time? Yeah.
Which one?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You know, I can give all, how about that white kid who killed, I think, 2 people drunk driving, and, you know, affluenza was the reason that he didn't get charged anything, because he's been so affluent and so coddled his whole life. He didn't know any better. Fuck you.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
Dude, I went to high school with someone a white dude who, driving his car like speed racer down a busy road, 20 miles an hour over the speed limit, hit a 15-year-old black girl who had a baby and killed her, and didn't go to jail. There was no response to that, other than, you know, the bullying and teasing that came from all the other kids in school. But there's no justice in that.
No justice, no peace, my friend.
No justice, no peace.
You know, and so, you know, and actually that might segue us into another really great conversation about the protests that are going on right now, and the focus of the mainstream media on the riots and the looters, and the conversations going on around that. You know, first of all, I don't know. If my people were getting murdered in the streets without any sort of repercussions, I think I might be burning shit down too. Actually, no,
yes, Jerome,
right? I'm a pacifist.
Jerome, can you actually put up that Facebook post that I saw that I moved me so much, because I was like, yes, amen. If someone murdered my son in cold blood while he begged for his life, and I knew there was little chance that justice would ever be served, I'd want to burn the world down too. I'd want everyone to burn it down with me. I'd want every single person across this country to feel and see my rage and my pain. I would set fire to everything until I was heard, until everyone in this country cared enough to stop turning a blind eye to these injustices or making excuses for them. I'd burn it all the way down. Yeah.
So you spare me any of the conversations about how riots and these unpeaceful protesters are the problem. They're not. And if you look at videos, you'll see it is the police that are causing most of the violence in the streets right now. You had a whole police department, I can't remember the city, that decided to quit. 57 officers decided to quit because 2 of them, who pushed over a 75-year-old man, were suspended. They weren't even fired. They were suspended. And in solidarity, these 57 other officers quit. I say, good riddance. Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
You know, like, done with them. And so it's maddening. You know, and I think that I can speak for you, Sammy, when we say we stand with the protesters.
Yeah, for sure.
And Gosh, I wish I could remember that really great JFK quote where it's like, if we don't, basically, if you can't get justice with peaceful protest, the only thing that's really left is rioting. And we know, and I bet Stephanie actually knows that quote. Maybe Stephanie will put it up there so I can sound a little more eloquent because I didn't look it up. You look at something like the Colin Kaepernick story, where he took a knee during the national anthem, and how they demonize that. And that man doesn't have a career now because of that. And that was a peaceful protest, and people were so pissed. And then this happens, and it's like people are shocked.
Yeah. Yeah. How dare you interrupt my entertainment with your peacefulness?
How dare you speak up for your people who are being murdered without accountability in the streets carelessly? The gall of that cop to be able to kneel for nearly 9 minutes on George Floyd's throat while being filmed. It just goes to show what's the word I'm looking for? The brazenness of what this system has created inside of our police force, for sure. The militarization of them, their training, that their lives are actually worth more than any civilian lives. It's part of the training.
When really the purpose of the police is to protect and serve the people. When you sign up for the police force, you are giving your life to the people, not the other way around.
That's right. It's not so that you get to carry a gun around and bully people, but we also see the brazenness among normal whites. Look at Trayvon Martin's death. That dude was whatever the fuck the murderer's name was, Zimmerman or whatever his name was. He was like a cop wannabe loser.
Like a neighborhood watch, self-appointed neighborhood watch.
Self-appointed neighborhood watch, because clearly he had nothing better to do with his life other than hunt down 17-year-old boys and kill them and then actually not get charged at all.
Yeah.
And so we see the brazenness just recently with the Ahmaud Arbery lynching that took place, and how those two men would never have been charged had that video not come out. Not to mention, I heard that video was put out by someone who was involved in it. The person that was driving behind was in pursuit with those guys. Maybe he wasn't buddies with them, but he actually thought it was something to be proud of.
Yeah.
I can't even. Yeah. So part of it, but in the final analysis, a riot is the language of the unheard. Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things I wanted to also talk about a little bit is where this fear of Black people comes from. And why are white people so scared of Black people? And I think the only answer I really have for that is propaganda. I think that our media over the last several decades has done an excellent job of demonizing Black people and making white women particularly scared of Black men as some animal that's going to come and rape you.
Even though white men are far more likely to rape than Black men are. Statistically.
And so I think that there's something to be said about the representation of Black people over the decades. They've even been represented as dangerous or as entertainment or as dumb. And I think that has, because that has been the dominant narrative in our media and in the propaganda, it has seeped into our society. And if that's something you believe as a white person, that Black people are inherently more dangerous, you have been suckered. You have been had.
Yeah. And, Kira, you and I have talked about this before, as far as, that whole conversation of white women should be afraid of Black men, which is bullshit. Because I know that in both mine and your sexual assault and rape histories, that was done by white men.
Only white men have ever assaulted me, and I've been raped one time, thank God, and it was a white man.
Yeah, thank God, only once. And you know, in my experience of being catcalled by black men on the street, I love it. My experience of it is that they're kind, generous, loving, and very, very respectful. So respectful. So if you are a white person afraid of black people, yes, please look at that, because there is no reason for it. I mean, like you're saying, the propaganda, when we look at these facts that black people are incarcerated at 5 times the rate of white people, I feel like I experience that for so many white people, that is affirmation of their experience that black people are dangerous. They're like, well, duh, look how many of them are incarcerated. So
it definitely is.
Obviously they're more dangerous, but no, they're just targeted. They're not more dangerous. They're doing the same thing that white people are. Human is human is human. Black people are human. White people are human. We all do the same shit.
That's right. And Stephanie added otherness. And I do think that has something to do with the fear factor.
Yeah, we're segregated so much we don't know each other. We don't have this opportunity to experience each other in the way that would create that which would bridge that gap between us and others. You know, because when we don't know and understand a group of people that looks different to us, we experience them as different, but they're not. It's human.
Absolutely. 100%. And so, you know, the last very important piece of this conversation that I wanted to step into is, what do white people do now?
Yeah.
What can white people do now? And I have several suggestions and a blog that I would love to read through. For everybody to get a sense of. And Stephanie mentioned earlier, the documentary 13th on Netflix is an eye opener. If you have not watched it, where have you been? No. Watch it. Okay, I don't watch a lot of things on TV at all. 13th was definitely something I did not miss.
And you stayed awake during it?
Oh yeah. Oh God, I get too angry. I can't sleep when I'm angry.
Kira, when any show or movie goes on, Kira is asleep in 5 to 10 minutes.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, I'm like a shark. You know, once I stop moving, I'm dead. So 13th on Netflix, you gotta see it. Talks about the 13th Amendment, freeing the slaves, and how slavery is actually still present largely today due to the prison industrial complex. And private companies are profiting yet again off of free black labor.
Yeah, because these prisoners get paid little to nothing to do so much work while they're in prison. They're not getting paid. And considering that black people are incarcerated at greater than 5 times the rate of white people, it is black people who are doing this work in our prisons to elevate corporations in their wealth. And like I said, it's a silent genocide. It's silent slavery. We're being duped.
We are. And then also a book that I have not yet read, but has been recommended to me by many trusted sources, called White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo. And I have yet to get my hands on that book so that I can read that, because I hear that it's fantastic. And if you are feeling triggered as a white person right now, or, you know, if triggered doesn't resonate with you, if you're feeling guilt, if you're feeling defensiveness, if you're feeling overwhelmed, like you need to do something, but you don't know how, that's all being triggered, all of that. So, you know, interpret that. And then I believe this book specifically goes to work on that. So take a look at that. And then I want to read the Candy Dish blog, is what I have written down, Inside the Candy Dish.
Yes, please.
It's great.
It is great.
It's called Dear White People, This Is What We Want You to Do. I don't want to hear, I can't believe this. I want you to read up on the history you've had the privilege to ignore. Mm-hmm. I don't want your opinions or thoughts. I want you to listen to Black experiences you've chosen to forget. I don't want your hashtag BLM Instagram story reposts. I want screenshots of your bailout money donations and patronage of Black labor art knowledge. I don't want your passive Twitter likes. I want you to follow Black tragedies as much as you follow Black trends. I don't want to vindicate your white guilt. It's yours to reconcile. I want you to check your racist parents and call out your apathetic white friends, especially when there are no people of color there, without expecting a pat on the back. Mm-hmm. I don't want your tears. I have plenty of those. I want you to check in on your Black loved ones and respect our emotional, physical boundaries. I don't want to diminish the adversity you've faced from aspects of your identity. I want you to acknowledge that your life is easier because you're white. I want you to admit that you would never choose to be a Black person because you know your life would be harder. I don't want you to be a good white. I want your activism to be questioned and challenged and criticized by Black people. I want you to grow from your mistakes so we can grow as a nation. I don't want your out of context MLK quotes on perpetual pacifism. I want you to see that the only difference between the Boston Tea Party protesters and I will say the Bundy protest, the recent COVID protest where everybody was armed, that's not what this says. I'm just adding that, sorry. And the Stonewall Watts and Rodney King riots is the former were white and latter were Black. I want you to be disobedient to signal the need for change and destroy the oppressive systems that make you comfortable and powerful. Mm-hmm. I don't want you to use public demonstrations as an opportunity to role play the purge or fulfill your Joker fantasies. I want you to use your white body to shield brown demonstrators from tear gas and bullets. I don't want to see another fucking video of police officers murdering Black people. I want peace. I don't want peace. I want justice. I don't want you to prove that you're not racist. I want you to know that you are the byproduct of a successful racist regime that has been capitalized off of Black oppression and suppression for centuries. I want you to realize that being racist is more American than apple pie. Mm-hmm. I don't want you to feel at ease. I want you to take a look at yourself. I want you to shed light on the corners of your subconscious you've glossed over for years. I want you to know that you are racist because you've been trained to be so, and it's within your power to become anti-racist. I don't want my strength to be praised. I want you to respect the breadth of my emotions. I want the space to break down and acknowledge my grief. I don't want to lose your attention. I want you to remember Tony McDade during Pride. I want you to remember Ahmaud Arbery during Independence Day. I want you to remember George Floyd when you vote in November. I want you to remember Amy Cooper at your Christmas dinner. I want you to remember Breonna Taylor when you hear a knock at your door. I want you to remember Trayvon Martin every time you see a bag of Skittles. I want you to know that this reconditioning is a necessary lifelong endeavor. I don't want you to be an ally for me or some Black person in your life. I want you to be an active ally because it is the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm. And below that, in this blog, which we will post in the notes section in the description of our video today, there are links to places that you can donate if you want to take action in that way. There are so many ways to take action as a white person. You can go
10 times the wealth. I mean, come on.
10 times the wealth. So donating is a really great way to do so because as white people, we have the means to do so. Even if you feel that you don't, you probably have more than someone else. If donating is not an opportunity that you have a body that is less likely to get injured or shot or tear gassed. So you have the ability to go to these protests and protect Black and brown people. If you are not physically capable of doing that, you have the ability, if you have a vehicle, to pick up people from hot zones in the city after protests so that they can get back home before curfew, so that they don't get harassed, so that they don't get killed, so that they don't get hurt, so that they don't get arrested. If you can't do that, you can donate food. How many of us have extra food in our cupboards? Even if you can't afford further groceries, there's probably stuff in your home you're not eating. You can donate food. You can donate
clothing. You can donate female hygiene products.
You can donate sanitizer. You can donate face masks for protesters. There's so many things that can be given. We just went over to Brave Alliance. Here. Jerome, can you put up the places to donate? The Brave Space Alliance is one of them. They are collecting food and clothing and medical equipment and dispersing that. You can also give your phone number, which is something that I've done. You can give your phone number to the people at Brave Space Alliance, and when it comes time for distribution of these supplies, they will contact you. And if you have a vehicle, you can help distribute supplies. So these are all places to donate that my partner and I have collected over the past week. They're donation, they're funds that are not getting as much viewership or donations as others that are more common. So these ones can help as well. They are funds that are for job skills, for underserved populations, for the Black and Pink Bail Fund is for Black mothers specifically, and Black women. And Brave Space Alliance is the center that I shared about. It is for people of color and queer people to have a safe space and have supplies that are needed. But right now they are specifically working for the rioting and protesting. So these are all places that you can go to look at what you can do to help. So there's so much that we can do that you may not have thought of yet. Something else that you can do is call out your white friends, white family members who are minimizing the situation or who are speaking out against Black people or speaking out against the rioting, who are speaking against changing or restructuring the system, who believe that white privilege doesn't exist. That is something you can speak up for if you don't have resources or a car or money to give. There's so much that can be done.
And I think the first step is just looking inward. I think that's really truly the first step in all of this. And I thought I had done that work fully. And I learned so much about myself this week. And so I assert that any other white person could learn a lot about their sort of automatic goings on. And then my temporary roommate, Tamale, says, I'm donating all of Kira's old workout clothes right now.
Yes.
I do have a lot of old workout clothes. That's for sure.
I have so much clothing to donate right now.
And then I actually have Tamale's next comment here. It's not over here yet, Sammy, so you may not see it because I'm actually on our YouTube show right now, so that's a little bit ahead of here. But she asked, do you have any links or resources for white people to initiate those conversations with their friends and family? I would say as far as how to initiate those conversations, I think it's just being present in the moment. Personally, I don't have a specific link that talks about how to initiate those conversations. I bet it's out there though. So thanks to Molly for bringing that up, because I'm guessing that actually, now that I think about it, I'm part of a Facebook group that over a week's time has gotten, I think, 16,000 members, called White People Doing Something. And it has been massively helpful for me. And so check out the group, White People Doing Something. And Tamale, like when people say, but the looting, a good response could be, that's all on that Facebook page.
Yeah.
And it is fantastic. And it's not just white people. It's white people and Black people sharing conversation together. There are so many like conversations on there that, are really old for me. Like, I'm like, really? Are you really asking this question? So there's been a lot of surprise in the realm of like, how do you not already know this? But also responses to some of the common things that we're seeing. And it's such a good cavalry.
Yeah. And I will say, from a controversial conversation perspective, because these are controversial conversations. If you are a white person engaging with other white people about the topic of racism, you're gonna get some pushback. And so something I recommend to people is don't go to the anger and defense and violent conversation immediately. You will further turn people off to the cause. You have to engage in these conversations with compassion if you're gonna persuade someone or change someone's mind. You can give facts, you can give resources, and your anger will further push them to the side that this looting is unnecessary, or that, this is all the fault of Black people. So we do have to engage in these conversations patiently and compassionately.
Yep. Well, that's our hour. Is there anything else, Sammy, that you wanted to share?
Yeah. So something I forgot to say in what white people can do is you can write to Congress people, you can write to your alderman, you can
call your sheriff's department. One of the protests I'm going to this afternoon is to, save prisoners from COVID. And again, we already know that the prison population is the Black people overrepresented in the prison population. So this is a real conversation for the Black community. So you can call those organizations and demand reform. Yeah. As a white person, you have privilege and power.
Yeah. People are more likely to listen to you. Yes. You're more likely to be heard. You're more likely to be listened to. So use that power for good.
Yeah. Cool.
Is there, I was going to say, is there anything else? And I stopped myself because I'm like, of course, there's so much more.
There's so much more.
But as usual, we are out of time.
Per the usual. Yeah.
Per the usual.
And feel free to comment in the comment sections if you have, comments. And if you have other resources, please share resources. I think we all really need to work together. Like Kit says on Hard Lens Media, we need to work together to build a better future.
Yeah, for sure.
All right.
Okay.
All right, Tammy. All right, everybody out there.
Oh,
and Cody.
And Cody. Someone's apparently at the door. So
we'll see you next week when we have Inez Jones.
So like, share, comment, subscribe, click the bell so that you can get notifications when we have a new video posting, and we will post all of our links from today in the description. It will be a long one. So but read up, do the work, don't avoid it.
Yeah. Yep. Stop being fragile. All right.
Okay.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Peace.